I was at a conference last week in Milwaukee, actually
Yep.
just north.
Close.
Yeah.
I love Milwaukee though. Milwaukee's great too.
And so I was trying to teach. I was running a little breakout group on what AI coaching is, and that itself is a fuzzy word because does that mean you're using AI to coach people? Does that mean you're using AI to become a better coach? Like it's interesting.
It
Anyways,
is.
so I turned on a Plod pin recorder and said, guys, we're here. None of us know everything, and none of us really know what we're doing. We're all improvising with curiosity and creativity as we find our ways of working in the future. So I just want to have an open conversation around what this is, and let's just let it unfold for us. So the human part, because AI wants to connect to us more, but technology also wants to connect us better together. So we had like an hour long, really nice conversation about 25 people, and I plotted it. And I took that and I took the transcript and the summary and I did a one-shot prompt into Claude and said, build me a slide deck, because I was giving the afternoon keynote. And I said, build me a slide deck. Put the tradecraft slide first, explaining how we're squeezing collective intelligence, enabling the human voice. And then after every slide, give me a framing question for the audience for a silent introspection. Cranked it out. I looked very quickly at it, but I didn't read the presentation. I went like improv Pechakucha style on stage and said, hey, look, we just discovered all of this context this morning. I want to brief you on this context, and I want you to think about what it means to you. Now, if each of those people went and took what they were thinking about and they started to work with their individual AIs, then we could do something really cool. Did you ever see the show Schitt's Creek?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember the episode with David, fold in the cheese?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Now we could fold in the cheese because every single person in that audience had their own facet. And if we could take all of that and put it together, that's a pattern of human-oriented collective intelligence in some ways. And I'll give you an example of a pattern. So I will talk to one of my teammates, maybe a science team member. We'll come up with a cool concept. I call my Baryon. I talk to it about it, tease it out. It helps me think about my thinking and pay attention to my attention on the things that I'm doing with it. Then I ask it to email me the seeds. Then I'll take those seeds and I'll write a position paper and I'll bring a team of scientists together, have a conversation, capture it. No AI in the conversation, but we're capturing the context. Then I'll take that and distill it, and then I'll extract it. And then all those same 7 scientists, I have a mirror in AI of them, their dossiers, their curated papers. I will ask them to have conversations 4 turns per round of all 7 people. So there'll be 28 conversations. I'm like, yeah, keep going. Oh, let's go this way. And I'll direct that. And I'll produce hundreds of conversations. Essentially, it's like a simulator time compression, sort of model. And you could do this with a marketing team. You could do this with subject matter experts. You can do whatever you want. Then I'll take that whole thing and I will distill it and I'll build a notebook LM out of it in Google. And then I'll send that out to the team members and say, everyone listen to this, develop a position paper. Then we'll fold in the cheese again. Suddenly we have something that is the distilled essence of what everyone's thinking, but extrapolated with an extreme amount of intelligence. Now, I could have gone and just tried to one-shot that and just on my own and see what happens. But now what we have is the human AI sandwich. And that's essentially the scaffolding stacking of human intelligence and artificial intelligence to unlock authentic intelligence.
Yeah. I think your take on that is very clear and very good to hear, because I know when I work with AI, whether it's in my job or in my business or whatever, to me, it is that sandwich, right? It's the would you call it authentic intelligence? Is that what? Yeah.
Authentic intelligence.
Yeah. Because like there's expertise that I have and ways I think or ways of thinking that I have that are unique to me. And while you look at, I look at a marketing team and the way I try to describe it to people is you may have 5 content writers right now. With AI, you probably need 1. And this is, of course, a very simple example. You probably need 1. And that 1 can then use their human intelligence and their human expertise to perfect the content that you took 5 people to write before that. So, there's like 4 down to 1 on a team as a simple example. But from what I understand and my take is like you still need the human input. You need it. First of all, you need it to train the AI models. And then also you need it to keep everything organic and accurate and all of those things. So I guess where I'm going with my all around question is, when you look at these technologies and where they're going, and then you look at kind of what I would call like a screwed economy that we're sitting in right now, and you look at, and I've covered these on my YouTube channel before, but you look at companies laying off people, AI layoffs, all that stuff. What do you what are your thoughts on companies laying off for AI? And then the reality is from my investigative work, a lot of them are hiring people back as contractors and kind of reshaping the social contract, I would say. And then a lot of times these layoffs are actually to fund the data centers in the case of Oracle, and it isn't actually because AI is replacing jobs. So I think like your theory is accurate, but like an economy that is rushing to AI is kind of creating a very uncertain future for a lot of people working. So in a nutshell, I guess, what are your thoughts on AI and how it's impacting the economy and what we can expect?
Yeah, I come at this from thinking about it from a leadership perspective. There, if you follow the news, there's been a number of recent CEOs of major corporations said, "I'm too slow, I'm too old, I'm out, ripcord," basically, which is a data point. So AI essentially has created intelligence that squashed knowledge. The idea of the knowledge worker that Drucker had in the 50s is it's eroding very, very quickly, and it's moving to the wisdom worker essentially, because we got to have judgment, clarity, discernment, decision quality, most importantly experience. And so now we have another sort of conundrum here, because if Claude has essentially replaced the need for an entry level financial analyst, well, how are they going to, like, where's the human capital come into that ecosystem to go through the conveyor belt and the scaffolding, to get that experience in? And so what it's causing also for leaders is they've got to rethink what a leader is in the age of AI. Leaders in the age of AI need to adopt new mindsets, and adopting new mindsets is very difficult. Behavior change is hard. Many people think, I'm good, I've read enough books, I can just operate. So new mindsets, new skill sets, and new thinking frames. Because when we change how we think, then we could build new skills in those ways. Around those skills, we can find new ways to apply those skills. And that's really, if you want to build your AIQ, you got to be AI first. So a leader used to be the knowledgeable person that had the data, and if they didn't have the data, they had money, they could go get some analytics and say, this is where we're going, and they knew in some ways. So there's a real rethinking of what leadership actually is in an organization. I think there's two kinds of leaders. I would say the top level leaders of organizations in the future: EBITDA focused and human focused. And right now we're seeing a lot of knee-jerk reactions from EBITDA focused ones. Now, I will continue my prophecy on this one. With the layoffs at Meta and Atlassian and other companies, there's going to be like 10,000 new startups in like 3 weeks, because it's easier to grab your friend and go out in the camper van for a weekend, build a company, build a product, than it is to get a job interview, in some ways, right?
Yeah.
It's completely wild. But there are a bunch of economic forces that are hitting simultaneously, and we're only talking about really the white collar force of what AI is. If you zoom out and say, what about robotics and automation? Like, are you going to see someone cleaning the toilet in a hospital in a major city in 3 years? Probably not. Taking out the garbage, what are those folks going to do? And like, I feel really warm and fuzzy if like Congress was talking about this.
Oh,
if people were like, hey, there's a storm.
You're asking too much of them. You're asking way too much of them.
But like there is a challenge, and really, I saw Rashid Tobacco-Walla. His book is escaping me for a second. Speak at a conference in Chicago a few weeks ago, and he basically said, "You have to treat your future like it's not your country, and you're an immigrant, and you need to find out where things are and the way things work and what is important and what the culture is of the future, because the world that you're living in now is just going to disappear." And I think there were some people in the audience that got it, but I don't think people understand the sense of immediacy for being an AI first citizen and anchoring it into your ways of working as solo But where I think people will really win is ways of working together. And that's like almost like improv troupe, jazz band. Like this is where if you have a background in theater, if you like the English language because it's the new programming language,
Yeah.
you're going to do quite well. And if you're willing to experiment and prototype and play, because the only way that you learn this is a friend of mine, Trish Auld, said this: toy, tool, teammate.
Mm.
First, you got to play with it. Then you understand how it works. Then you know that holding the metal end of a screwdriver and whacking something with the plastic is not a way to hammer something, unless that's your only option, right? But eventually, it becomes an indispensable teammate for you, and that's when you know that you're really building your AIQ and your ways of working. But I think we're in for some serious surprises. I have some very talented friends that have been sitting in the job market for a good while. And I have some friends that are solo consultants that used to hire specialists to do things for them that they'll never use anyone again. Essentially, maybe for tiny things. But the amount that one person can do is amplified so much. The question is, who's the best at it, and will the hourly consulting fee, will that be the thing, or will it be pay on outcomes?
Yeah.
Pay for intelligence, so things like that. Like there's a bunch of emergence here, and the better that someone has the MacGyver School of Engineering attitude, which is improvise or die, the better they're going to succeed.
Thank you for listening to this clip from the full episode of Eyes Wide Open. Please like and subscribe for daily clips and new episodes that drop every Tuesday. I appreciate you.